Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast of Record. It is Tuesday, May 26th. Man, it is hard to believe that we are in the last week of May already. June is coming up fast. That March just went real slow while we were figuring out how to deal with coronavirus, and now it feels like everything's just leaping forward. But we've got some news stories, updates, and a couple deep dives for you today. Joe is not in the studio. Joe's taking some much deserved time off. So you've got me and you've got producer Nipa today.
Hi,
So
everyone.
settle in. We've got some great stories, including we're getting a little meta today, and we're going to be talking about a story I wrote as one of our news stories, which I know is going to blow everyone's mind out there. So, Nipa, what do we got first up in the news lineup?
So, the first article we're going to talk about is YouTube brings more ad formats and measurement to TVs. This is on TechCrunch.
Yep, captivating stuff. But look, one of the things we know about the listeners, about you all, is that you do come here for some technical advice. We have a lot of marketers, a lot of people that are buying ads out there that listen to the show. So every once in a while, we like to get a little bit in the weeds for you. This one, again, is out of TechCrunch. YouTube is bringing more ad formats. So here's the big thing about YouTube. YouTube has seen and you've heard us talk about this on the podcast a couple times in the last year, but YouTube is finally seeing the spike that they wanted to see in television viewing, and that's due to the mass adoption at this point of either smart televisions or smart boxes, streaming boxes, whether it's a Roku or an Apple TV or anything else that's connected to your television. Obviously, people are at home right now; they're doing a lot more streaming than they've ever done before, especially in the middle of the day. Not judging, just saying it's going on. So YouTube has seen a solid spike in their usage on full-size televisions. Obviously, people continue to consume on their phones, on their tablets, and of course on their computers. But watch time for news just on YouTube TV, which is their on-demand and live television service, has grown 450%. So YouTube is adapting to that by adding some additional ad formats. It makes sense. Just like they sell pre-roll or mid-roll ads in the YouTube videos, they want to make sure that you're watching on your phone or on your computer. They want to make sure they can cover that mid-view on screen. So just a couple of stats for you. There's been an 800% year-over-year growth in feature-length movies on YouTube, which of course is due to their move into premium content with their paid subscription. 125% increase in TV shows and a 250% increase in live content. And that's all over the world. And those numbers are a little bit smaller for just the US, but a huge portion of that traffic is being driven by US traffic.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, I feel like YouTube TV has been everywhere in the last few weeks, and I didn't even know about it as much before, but now I think it's definitely being used very widely.
And it's been a heavy critique of Google for a while that they just weren't getting users, they weren't getting numbers on that side of the business. YouTube obviously has been a huge payoff for Google in the long run, but has almost always been driven by computer views or mobile device views. So they're actually starting to penetrate your television now, which is a big deal for them and going to be a big deal for the advertising industry moving forward. So, it makes sense that you've got some new advertising options to help that. One is the brand lift measurement tool is now going to be opened up to televisions. If you're an ad buyer, you're probably familiar with the brand lift tool on other types of Google ads. So that's now going to be available on smart televisions and connected TV apps. For viewers, it means that skippable ad formats are going to be available on the big screen, which is a big deal for folks. What's next up in the news?
We've got a CNET article. Facebook redesign goes live with dark mode, cleaner look.
So this one was interesting to me, and this is actually a couple of weeks old, but I didn't even know Facebook had been redesigned. And the reason for that is it hasn't gone to my account yet. And this redesign is not necessarily on the mobile app. So if you're a mobile user, this won't drastically affect you. But if you use Facebook on your computer at any point, this is what we're talking about. So there's a new cleaner look. There's also a dark mode available for desktop. It's being very slowly rolled out from what I can tell. This was back from May 8th that this article first came out, and Facebook said it was going to be rolling it out to people over the next few weeks. Mine still doesn't have this feature.
Mine
But I
doesn't.
mean, yeah, as we've seen with most web applications, the move here seems to mostly be taking features from the mobile app and putting them into the desktop experience. So they're organizing things the same way they do in the mobile experience. And they're bringing that mobile experience to your desktop, the same way Apple is with a lot of their apps.
Yeah, it just gives the user more choices. Not everyone looks at things the same way, so being able to view it in the way that you choose is a nice option.
And I completely expect that there will be the wide outrage that exists every time Facebook
Always,
decides to redesign its homepage.
always. Our next article is on TechCrunch also. It is Pinterest rolls out new board features, including notes, dates, and section suggestions.
Yeah, this one is interesting to me. Pinterest, we've talked about several times in the last 6 months on the podcast. They're making some interesting moves. Their ad platform has finally matured. Pinterest is a really interesting space. Nipa, are you a heavy Pinterest user?
You know, I was initially when they first rolled out, and
Hmm.
then I kind of have dropped off. There was the huge movement for arts and crafts on there that was really hard to maintain and keep up with, and so I found it a little too high pressure for myself. But I do find really cool inspiration on there.
Sure. Pinterest is interesting. I mean, it's Pinterest, and that makes sense. Pinterest is 70+% women user wise. It's less than 30% male users. If you've ever been on Pinterest and seen any of the content, that probably makes perfect sense to you based on what you've seen. I've seen an uptick in my own Pinterest use from virtually zero to something just in the last few months, primarily centered around this. My wife and I bought a home last year, and we've been slowly making some design upgrades and changes over time. But there's a few more things, especially since we've spent the last 3 months at home with a newborn. There's been some things we've thought about upgrading, some new redesigns to bathrooms or to the kitchen, what have you. Pinterest has been a really good place for organizing a lot of those thoughts. A lot of the content on Pinterest is geared towards home design, and the nice thing about Pinterest is, instead of just looking at, say the pages of Architectural Digest, Pinterest allows me to go off into the straight to those products, so I can figure out if there's a tile that we like, where we can order that specific tile from. If there's a paint color or a wallpaper or a piece of fabric that we like for a curtain, where we can actually acquire those things, which is the nice thing about Pinterest. But the news here is not necessarily about Pinterest growth, even though Pinterest has had really solid growth, especially from 2018 to 2019. They saw almost 8 million new users from 2018 to 2019, which is a really big deal considering how mature of a platform, how long Pinterest has been around. So that was a 7 to 9% growth over that period. But the article here focuses on the new features that Pinterest is rolling out. And so those features are notes, section suggestions, and dates that can be added to pins. So these are not groundbreaking features, but the kind of features you expect to see from a mature platform that's making its longtime users happy. Those longtime users are what drive revenue for Pinterest because they're the ones seeing most of the ad content, interacting with most of the ad content. And Pinterest certainly has a smaller slice of that pie than the other big social media apps.
I wonder if the UX has gotten better than when I first started using it. When it first rolled out, people could pin anything and you would click it and it wouldn't necessarily take you to whatever it was originally
Yeah,
pinning.
it could just be some random
Yeah.
page that someone had stolen a photo. It's gotten a little better, I will say, in that category. So they've tightened that up a little bit. You're seeing more original content than you are seeing copycat content, and that's because it's easier to share. It's easier to pin other people's stuff at this point. It makes it easier to naturally engage with that content.
Cool. Maybe I'll have to start using it again for more ideas since I'm home all the time too.
Yeah.
All right, we were going to do a deep dive, a couple of deep dives, right? Our first one is in Ad Age. It is titled Millennials Killed
Oh
These
no, we missed an
Products.
article. We missed my article. We missed the most important article to talk about in the news updates.
Ah, I'm so sorry. That is the
That's
most important
so
article.
depressing.
I'm so sorry. That was not
No,
in the list.
it's fine.
I
We're
thought that was a
going
deep
to
dive until I thought we were saving it best for
Oh
the.
no, I don't think we need a deep dive on it.
Okay.
That would just be kind of self-serving. But I did want to point it out because I think it's interesting. topic for discussion during COVID-19. So I wrote an article on Medium this past week entitled "What I Would Do If I Were Ed Bastian." And if you don't know who Ed Bastian is, he's not a celebrity. You're not missing anything out here. Ed Bastian is the CEO of Delta Airlines. So I'm a fairly unabashed Delta Airlines loyalist. I try to exclusively travel in the air with Delta. I'm a frequent flyer. I love Delta. So when I was trying to think about how companies should be looking at their content production and output during coronavirus, one of the hardest hit industries obviously is the airline industry. It made a lot of sense for me to think about it from the perspective of Delta Airlines. So I'm not going to rehash the article for you, but um, the principle is this. My recommendation, after kind of deep diving on what Delta is stuck with, obviously where the travel industry is as a whole, people are not sure when it's going to be safe to get back on an airplane. When they do, obviously there's going to be new rules in place. So my concept was this. They need to focus on a pillar content strategy. If you listen to the podcast for a while, you've heard us love on Gary Vaynerchuk a lot, and that pillar content strategy comes from Gary. He talks about how a single keystone piece of content, in some cases, this podcast is our pillar content for our company. For another company, it might be a live show. In the case of Delta here, what I was recommending was that they do a series of short form, not 30-second, but not 30-minute features either. So 3 to 7 minute videos with CEO of the airline, Ed Bastian, kind of tackling every question and part of the coronavirus issue and breaking it down for people. So that might mean how the aircraft cabin gets cleaned. That might mean what the new cleanliness procedures are for check-in. That might mean what kind of mask needs to be worn by passengers on board, how your baggage is getting handled, when they last cleaned the Sky Club, is it safe to eat and drink from the Sky Club? All these things that air passengers, and particularly the very lucrative passengers for the airline, which are business travelers, what they're going to want to know and what they're going to be expecting. So Delta, and some airlines do this, some don't, but Delta puts CEO Ed Bastian in the front of almost all of their safety videos fleet wide. When you step on a Delta aircraft, he thanks you for flying Delta, your loyalty, blah, 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 welcomes you on board the plane. So the concept is, if you're a Delta traveler frequently, you've seen this guy's face repeatedly. He needs to be the trusted person that is telling you that it's safe to fly when it is safe to fly. And then, of course, giving you the details on what Delta has done to make it safe for you. And then that content, let's say it's 5 to 10, 3 to 7 minute videos that they've created as this pillar, can be broken down to a ton of different short form pieces, from quote graphics to 20-second clips of the video, stills from the video, Facebook stories, Snapchat stories, TikToks, you name it. And that concept comes again from Gary's concept. So I'll give them a free plug. Gary and his company VaynerMedia, one of the largest digital media agencies in the world, put out an ebook. An ebook makes it sound almost kind of cheap at this point, like free ebook, but it's not. It's a guide. It's a 270
It's
page
long,
guide.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a slide deck basically that they put out of how to put out 64 pieces of content in a day, and basically how to do it without ripping your hair out along the way. So that's free on Gary's website. You can find the link to it in my article. You can find it pretty easily by Googling. There's not even a sign up form. It is free to download and use for you or your organization if you have a content challenge, or if you're someone that's kind of overwhelmed by the need to produce all this content for the current, media consumption society that we live in. I would recommend checking out this guide, because it makes it seem a lot more manageable than just hearing, hey, you should put out 64 pieces or even 100 pieces of content in a day.
Yeah, and I think going back to the idea of having Ed Bastian as like the spokesperson for these videos and the spokesperson for this content, I think it's something that people need to see right now. They need to, even if you're not familiar with who he is,
Yep.
You recognize that here's the CEO of Delta talking about all the safety measures they're taking. He's on the ground, he's involved, he's being a
He's
leader.
willing to get on a plane and
Mhm.
fly somewhere on their aircraft, right?
Right.
Knowing that he's going to interact with his children or significant other or whomever.
It's helpful to see people being leaders when
Yep.
they're needed. So I think
And it
that's
wasn't a critique of them either,
yeah.
right? I don't think they're doing anything wrong. They have a pretty detailed like COVID-19 response page on their website. They've been very transparent from the beginning about, even before this happened, the cleaners that they use on aircraft were already rated to kill viruses like coronaviruses, but they've stepped up the frequency of those cleaners. So, I mean, this is not by any means a crack at Delta.
Mhm.
It's how do you take all those things you've been doing and make them clear to the people that you need to eventually convince to get their butts back in the seats on planes.
Right, and adding a form of reassurance, I think, too.
Yep, yep, for
It's a
sure.
good article. Check it out on Medium, and I think Matt has also shared it on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Anywhere that you look at your news and media and social media, you should be able to find it. Um, Next, our deep dives. Sorry to skip over Matt's article. We're going to move on to the deep dives now. Um, the first one is an ad age. Millennials killed these products, but COVID-19 brought them back.
And it's a funny collection of products here. And I mean, I love Ad Age. We use content to talk about from Ad Age all the time. But the three examples that they give here that were big ones were American cheese that was too processed, napkins, because millennials just didn't need napkins. They weren't something that was an important enough product to be differentiated from paper towels. They already bought paper towels. They didn't need to buy separate napkins. And then what was the other one? Golf. Golf is
Golf.
the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, so, I mean, Nipa, you read this article along with me. Have you noticed a resurgence in your household of any of these products?
I mean, we have a 8-year-old in our house, so American cheese, I think, is just like a
It's just a
standard.
staple. Yeah, you got to have
You
it.
have to have it. So that I think we've had. Um, Napkins, I grew up using them. My parents were really big on using them. Like we went through a cloth napkin phase. I think I still don't
That's
really
bold.
buy them. I think if I need anything, I'll probably use a paper towel.
I must be a weird outlier there because I mean, our household has purchased napkins and uses them for just about every meal we consume regularly for a long time. So,
Mhm.
I mean, look, I'm at the upper end of the millennial threshold, right? I'm probably within a year or two of being on the cutoff range for millennials, but still,
I'm right at the cusp.
yeah.
Some people consider me Gen X, some people consider me millennial. It's really dependent on.
Well, I mean, I'm 34, but there's 26-year-olds and 27-year-olds that are considered millennials too,
Yeah.
and there's just not a ton that in 2020 like I have in common with 26 and 27-year-olds, save for maybe some outliers. For us, American cheese was just not something we really used anyway.
Mhm.
Granted, the only child in our household currently consumes one thing and one thing only: milk. Um, but my wife is super into cheese. Like cheese is a big deal to her, so we would never waste cheese calories on something so just terrible as American cheese. We're going to
Yeah.
use a real cheddar at the very least, but probably something fancier than that. And then she keeps the feta cheese industry in business. Self.
I mean, I will say that our daughter has moved on. I mean, she'll eat American cheese. She likes it, but she at this point prefers cheddar. And lately, she's been eating manchego. So I mean, we're flexible. Sometimes we have to go back to American cheese because she decides she wants it, and sometimes we don't. So it really
And one of
depends.
the things the article like points out is that everyone's been at home and grilled cheese sandwiches are a really easy at home lunch to make. So there's
Mhm.
been an uptick in grilled cheese. I
And it
don't.
does melt really well.
Yeah, it melts really well. The fact that it's super processed makes it melt very nicely when you put it in the pan. Um, Cereal is another thing
Mhm.
that's been an increased big deal. That makes sense again, right? Like people are at home, they're not rushing out the door to get to work and grabbing a granola bar or getting a donut when they get to the office. They can have at least a little bit, a breakfast that takes a few more minutes. So, I mean, the cereal thing makes perfect sense to me. I'm not sure how beer is one of the items here. Now, maybe like
Maybe
basic
the
beer.
type of beer. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe
I
the
don't.
type of beer has changed drastically. So like Budweiser and Coors,
Oh, it's saying
you
here
know,
that it took a backseat to trendier beverages like cider and
okay, and
spelt
that makes
seltzer.
sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
But now that you've got to stage it out, maybe maybe the revenue is not coming quite as fast into your household, you got to go to a good staple that you can get a lot of for a good price. So
Mhm.
that's where Budweiser and Coors do their thing really well.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say I've never played golf, so I don't know
I
about
haven't
golf.
either. Yeah, I can't
So
I can't relate to that one at all. I didn't play golf before coronavirus. I don't play golf during or after coronavirus. So
but it feels like it would be a pretty socially distant sport to be
yep,
able to do, and
yep.
you
You can
can
play
be
with one or two other
outside.
people.
Mhm.
My house is right next to a golf course, and there's does not seem to have been any slowdown in traffic on the golf course. I don't know enough to know if the demographics have changed at all in the past couple months, but it has certainly not hurt the golf clubhouse too badly.
Mm-mm. All right. Then the next and last article we want to deep dive in is in Adweek. TikTok is growing up, and so are its users.
And that is the thesis of what I want to end the show with today. Is I do want to talk about TikTok. Um, TikTok is a really interesting beast. So it started out getting kind of the Snapchat treatment, right? Where it was just, viewed by most as being something the kids were doing, couldn't find any particular foothold or relevance in, anyone, let's say, older than 25.
Mhm.
What we've seen, in my opinion, in the last couple months is an explosion in TikTok usage by people that do not fit that demographic anymore. I think a huge part of that probably has to do with the fact that people are sitting at home now. They're more bored. They have less to do in a lot of cases. They're using their phone. They're flipping through their phone. They're trying to find content to consume. There's actually a really interesting community on TikTok, though, of mothers, of fathers, of higher age adults than 18 to 24 that are using TikTok, and not just using it, but using it in a really funny way that is getting a lot of attention and a lot of followers. So, I mean, probably more so than any other social media app, humor is really important to TikTok. And if you don't know the basis of TikTok, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version here. So it morphed out of something called Musically, which was kind of a lip syncing service app. So TikTok now, you can record original content, you can record your voice, your audio. That's perfectly fine. But where TikTok gets really interesting is when you use a track from another user, or when you use a track that is a real life music track. And so sometimes that means lip syncing to that song. Sometimes that means finding something you can do in your house that is contextually humorous that goes along with that song. And then there are a few, we'll call them 10 to 30 like standout clips that just get repeated over and over and over again. Dance is a big part of TikTok, especially if you are an 18 to 24-year-old female. If you're not dancing on TikTok, you probably don't have a lot of users or a lot of followers yet. And one of the biggest consumed pieces of content on TikTok is this obnoxious little tune that goes "Deet, deet, deet, doo, 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 doo." So everyone that has been on TikTok now hates me because I put the earworm that they probably just got out of their head back in their head. And it's very simple. The dance is pretty stupid, and it is just someone standing in front of their camera going "Deet, deet, doo, 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 doo." So, I mean, it has turned into how can I do this creatively? If you're a celebrity, you don't need to do much other than do the video. If you're an 18 to 24-year-old female, maybe you do this in your bathing suit or in your going out clothes to get attention. If you're an 18 to 24-year-old dude, maybe you show off your hard work at the gym. It's just kind of all over the place.
So have you made a
Um,
TikTok yet with that dance? I
I
mean, we
I have
might
not
have to
made
do
one with that
this.
dance. Yeah.
We may have to
I
do
have
this.
made one single TikTok. It was not to the track of anything else. It was me rocking the baby in his chair and kind of singing a Disney lullaby to him. And in the middle of that, he decides to spit up all down the front of my shirt. So
It's
that was my
hilarious.
first
I saw
TikTok.
it.
And I mean,
Yeah.
but my first post, I have two friends on TikTok. Just to show you the kind of engagement that happens there. My first post had almost 19,000 views with
Mhm.
my two friends.
It is a
So,
lot easier to scroll through content on TikTok. Like
yes.
you can you open it and you dive in, and it's really hard to come back out. Like you're stuck in there for a while because
Oh,
every
it's a
video
time
is so
warp.
different. Yeah. Every
So
piece of
much
content is
so
so different.
TikTok itself has this little video, and if you have spent, I don't know what the cutoff is, but if you've spent what they determine to be too much time consuming TikTok content, they pull up this video that says like, "Hey, maybe take a break and go do something else, and then come back later on," which is kind of embarrassing. Like when you get that video, like, "Holy crap!" Like the app thinks I've been here too long.
It's like the Netflix question when you've watched a few episodes and they're like, "Are you still
And that
watching?
one,
Do
like
you
that
want
one,
to
at least a little
continue?"
makes more sense because like there's a possibility that you could have fallen asleep. This one's just directly like, hey, no, you've been doing this for too long. Like you need to take a break. Like you need to go back to
Yeah.
the real world.
I have not seen that yet, so I will maybe I'll just have to spend a lot of time on TikTok.
You obviously haven't been consuming, yeah, enough TikTok content yet. But TikTok's interesting because it's really young. The ad platform is very immature. TikTok made the decision right off the bat to not allow political advertisements. So if you're trying to go somewhere to escape political advertising during the upcoming Trump Biden slugfest, TikTok is going to be a great place to do it because you can't put political ads. You can put political content on there, so you may run into that, but you at least won't get served the same 30-second ad 50 times like you will watching over the top television right now.
Yeah. I mean, I've enjoyed it. I haven't made any TikToks yet, but it's something I've been considering, but it's definitely one of those things that I feel like some people have an easy time just creating really quick, easy videos that they post constantly.
Yep.
I tend to overthink it. So
There's like stages of it, right? I downloaded TikTok, I don't know, 6 months ago
mhm.
and just couldn't figure out how to get into it, right? Like thought it was stupid, like had a lot of trouble finding a foothold in it. Gave it another try a few months ago. Um, Started to kind of get that foothold, and now it's to the point where like I recognize things that are culturally happening because of TikTok. Both
Mhm.
I recognize cultural events inside of TikTok posts I see, but now I mean it's so out there that you're seeing TikTok culture come to the outside world,
Mhm.
which may seem weird to some of you that have never set foot in this app space before, but it's happening. So there's a very popular Megan Thee Stallion song called Savage right now. And using that song alone is a very popular TikTok video. But there is a remix that someone made just by simply making their own voice note in TikTok about Tiger King and about Carol Baskin. So it's Carol Baskin killed her husband, whacked him. Don't tell me that it didn't happen. So some lady posted a video the other day that she was at Walmart, like just wandering down an aisle at Walmart by herself and just yelled out Carol Baskin. And from 3 aisles over, you heard somebody else go, killed her husband, whacked him. So, I mean,
It's everywhere.
the TikTok wave is coming. And maybe you still think that it's, just giving away your information to the Chinese government, which it may very well be, but chances are they probably already have it anyways. So
It's true. There's a number of resources. Um,
I did not
yeah.
know I had a dog in the room with me until right this second. Lucy must have been hiding under the bed. So welcome Lucy to the podcast of record. She's
Hi,
she's
Lucy.
back there climbing on a pillow. Did not know she was in the room.
She was so quiet.
Yep.
So anything else, Matt?
Nope. I think that'll do it for this week. Anything else on your end?
Nope.
All right. Well, hope you enjoyed this episode. Sans Joe of the podcast of record. We'll be back next week, a little bit crazier with some more random topics to talk about for sure. But until next week, stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you enjoyed the show, tell your friends about it. But most importantly, jump in your favorite podcast app of choice. Leave us a rating or review. Helps more people discover the show. We hit some major milestones that we forgot to celebrate in the past few weeks of downloads, but keep them coming. We really appreciate it. We've enjoyed, even though we had to figure out how to morph this show to create it from home during the pandemic. We've enjoyed being able to produce it and put out content for you. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week.